today is Ann Thomas, an award-winning advocate for people with hearing loss. Ann is the HLAA brand ambassador, and among other things, she is co-author of Getting the Hearing Loop Advocacy Guide and Toolkit Handbook. And this is you. Share all the things you got. I think it's about ADA, correct? The floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here today when I'm seeing all of the people who have chosen to attend my presentation. And you're my friends, you're my colleagues. Thank you very much for giving up your Saturday morning. So today, the topic of my presentation is something that's very, very dear to my heart. It's what allows me to live the best life I can possibly live with hearing loss. And that's know what your rights are, know what you need, and ask for what you need. And so this slide very easily depicts what happens to us, the scrambled sound between the heads when somebody talks. And so communication access is really everybody gets the message. How many people in this room think that hearing loss is a disability? Just raise your hand with the raise the hand button in the menu bar so that we can kind of take a look at seeing who all here is aware of that. Okay, so I'm seeing a couple people here. Whoops. Okay, so great. So we have people who are aware of the fact that hearing loss is a disability. And there's a huge stigma around hearing loss. And I liken it to what might have been about mental illness in the 50s. It was a taboo topic. I mean, nobody even mentioned the word mental illness. It wasn't spoken in public. And today, almost everybody has talked to somebody at some time. It's not a big deal. It's you need somebody to talk to, so you go talk to somebody. But that's not like that today for the most of the 50 million people with hearing loss. Many people with hearing loss are uncomfortable talking about their difficulty. Somehow it makes them feel less than. And if they won't talk about it, they would never think to ask for the assistance that they may be granted by law because they don't understand. So we're a disability that has covered under federal, state, and local civil rights laws. We have in 1959 the California Unruh Act. In 1973, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act and Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act. And at this time, it may be very difficult to get any of those two enforced with our current political scene. I think that both of them have sort of been pushed by the wayside, but I don't have anything more positive to add about that. And in 1990, we have the Americans with Disabilities Act. This year, the ADA celebrated its 35th anniversary. And still, most people are not asking for communication access. We really need to make our voices heard. The ADA is divided into four categories. The ADA standards are divided into four categories. And those categories are employment, state and local government, public entities, telecommunications, and then there's a miscellaneous title. You may be wondering, where can I get access? Well, really, it's just about everywhere. You can see by the icons on this slide, museums, schools, graduations. You have grandkids, you're going to the graduation to be able to understand them. Theater, at your bank and the hospital, stadiums, at the pharmacy, your grocery store, and so forth. So what does the ADA actually grant us? So before I talk about exactly what it grants. I'd like to let people know, because it took me a really long time to understand this. There is the ADA, which is the law, and then there is how the law is applied, which is called the ADA standards. Most of the time, I was always saying the ADA when I actually meant the standards. And I'm assuming most people here today and others are doing the same thing. So the ADA itself, actually, the goal of the ADA for people with hearing loss is to ensure that communication access with people with disabilities is equally as effective as communication with people without disabilities. Because I have seen who the participant list is here today, and I know most of you, I know that most of you know that that's not true and that's not happening. So that's our task, to speak up so that people continue to improve. Hearing loss is common. The rule of thumb in figuring out how many people have hearing loss is 20% of the population. So that means that 775,800 people in Los Angeles have significant hearing loss. And a lot of people are being left out. One of the reasons they're being left out is because they don't know that they're entitled to accommodations, or even what the accommodations may be, or they're embarrassed, or they don't like to draw attention to themselves, or we can go on and on and on. Unfortunately, or fortunately, our disorder is considered a spectrum disorder, and that means it's a range. So one size does not fit all for what accommodations would work for people. So if you happen to identify as a person who's deaf with a capital D, and you consider yourself a member of the deaf community, ASL is your primary mode of communication. If you are late deafened, you probably never learned ASL, or you have a severe hearing loss or a mild to moderate hearing loss. So we have a range here, and what you may choose as the appropriate accommodation for you could be different than somebody else. When you start asking for the communication access that you need, something that you're probably going to run into is what I call hearing loss myth number one. Most people think that the majority of people who have hearing loss are deaf with a capital D, and their primary mode of communication is via ASL. And that is completely untrue. It's estimated that the percentage of the 50 million people with hearing loss who use ASL and know ASL may be as low as 1.5%. So basically, 98% of us don't know ASL. Now, when you start advocating for yourself and you self-identify as having hearing loss, I will guarantee most of you will run into the situation where the first thing that you will be offered for your accommodation so that you can participate is ASL. So this needs to be part of the conversation for us. And I'm very, very, very happy that the deaf community is provided with ASL. I don't want to negatively impact their ability to receive what they need, but I want it to be very clear for those of us who don't know ASL that that's not what we need. During the pandemic, I got 2 very, very successful cochlear implants. I never thought I would ever be able to function and hear as well as I do today. I can be sitting in my office, where I am right now, and have my windows closed and hear the birds chirping outside. I could not remember the last time I heard birds before I got my implant. Something that's transpired, though, is that I do so well that people are surprised when they hear me talk about accessibility because they're thinking that I don't have any problems ever. And so my language and how I engage in my hearing loss has completely changed for myself and for all of you too. And I hope if you don't take another thing away from my presentation today, that this slide and when I talk about it will have an impact on you and give you the courage to ask for what you need. People with hearing loss, me, all of you, we live uncertain lives. We never know when we're going to be able to understand and when we won't. We may be doing perfectly well, and all of a sudden, another person starts speaking, and either they speak in a very quiet voice, which some people do, they have an accent, they're not using a good microphone, and all of a sudden, we're completely left out in the cold. So if we don't ask for communication access based on our worst day rather than our best day, it's too late usually to get the accommodation that you need if you need it. I know all of us like to think that we're doing better than we really are with our hearing loss. And so we like to focus on positive things if we possibly can. I'm not discouraging you from doing that. I want you to think positively about how you can live your best life by making sure that you're proactive and that you ask for communication access in case you need it. If you don't need it, it's not a bad thing. It's okay. But if you do need it, if you didn't ask for it, there's nothing you'll be able to do, and then you're stuck. Some of you may be new to hearing loss. You might not know that hearing instruments, devices, aren't enough to provide the speech intelligibility that we all need to be able to be participants in conversations with other people. So, what can some of those problems be? What can some of those situations be that are particularly difficult to us, for us? So, some of those obstacles can be the first one is the distance from the sound source. Most people are not aware of the fact that hearing instruments have a distance limitation. The distance limitation for the effectiveness of hearing aids, cochlear implants, and bone conductive devices is about 6 feet. That's not very far. If you put your arm out and somebody else puts their arm out, that's about 6 feet. Now, somebody may be sitting here and go, well, I get more than that. So I want to give you one caveat. If you have mild to moderate hearing loss, you are not relying fully on your hearing instrument to provide the sound for you. So you may be able to understand further than a 6-foot distance. But the more severe your hearing loss becomes and you depend on the hearing instrument, that's the limitation for the instrument. The next thing is the acoustics of the room. Oh gosh, it's terrible, right? You're in a room and all of a sudden you start getting all this reverberation and echo, which makes it impossible for you to really understand the speech. Then we have competing background noise. Have you ever tried to understand somebody when loud music is playing? Or, like upcoming for the Thanksgiving holidays, people are going to have the football game on, trying to understand somebody for that. It's really hard. So the next thing, oops, sorry. So something that you could do is you could use a personal story here, if you're talking to somebody and you're talking about the obstacles ahead of time, maybe for your family for Thanksgiving, you might be able to create a story for yourself so that you could be able to talk to them ahead of time, although more than likely you're going to have to remind them. And kind of a sad thing is that my hearing has gotten so good that I have fallen back on what I didn't want everybody to do to me when I had bad hearing. I'm talking to my husband, not from in the same room now. I have to really remind myself sometimes about my good habits that I had before I got my cochlear implants. So, what might communication access look like? So, I really want to talk about the things that can be easily accomplished. So, since the ADA is not completely specific in what it requires of you, except in certain situations, if something is very simple, like someone was going to ask, "Where is the restroom?" You could easily ask someone to write it down on a piece of paper. You could walk up to an information counter and you could say, can you please write down for me where the restroom is? And they could write down the hall to the right. That would be considered communication access because you didn't really need very much to be able to understand what was happening. Now, I would like it if every information counter had a whiteboard. It's really easy to use. I also want to remind people that if they run into a situation that they're asking somebody to write something down for them, and they're looking at them like their person's looking at you like with deer in the headlights, right? I have personal stories where I have had to repeat like 10 times. There's something about, can you write that down for me, that doesn't connect for people. Just realize they're not getting it, and eventually they're going to get it. I mean, I've even done, can you write it down? I can't understand you. Write it down. So during the pandemic, we started seeing wonderful infographics like the image that's on the left here. And part of that came out of the fact that we couldn't understand with face masks, and people wanted to find out information from us. So this was developed by the Massachusetts Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, and I think it's an excellent example. So you can see up there where the faces are in the upper left-hand corner, somebody could point to, how do you feel? And you could point back to what that was. That's communicating, right? You're able to communicate back and forth. They could ask you the situation or your symptoms. How long have you had them? So these are simple, easily accomplished examples of what communication access could be. So the ADA law requires auxiliary aids and services. So the first and simplest auxiliary aid and service would be a personal amplifier. The next level up would be assistive listening systems in rooms that had PA systems. Could be CART captions, like Lisa is providing fabulous gold standard CART captions for us today, or interpreting. So what does the personal amplifier or pocket talker look like? Here's an example on this screen. And this is Williams Sound version 2.0. And the ADA, the accommodations are required to be for people with no hearing instrument, people with a hearing instrument, and people with a hearing instrument and a telecoil. So for it to be completely ADA compliant, they would have to have available headphones or earbuds for a person with no hearing aid, headphones for a person with a hearing aid, no telecoil, and a neck loop for someone who has a hearing aid with a telecoil. Assistive listening systems are actually mandated by the ADA any place where audio amplification is provided. That means if they're speaking into a microphone using a public address system, they are required to provide an assistive listening system. There are 3 types of assistive listening systems. Our favorite, and you can all see in the background my Get in the Hearing Loop poster. And Valencia mentioned that I'm a co-author of Get in the Hearing Loop Handbook and Advocacy Guide, and I'll talk a little bit about that at the end. So hearing loops are our favorite. If we have telecoils in our hearing device, we go into the room, press the button, or take out your app and select the appropriate program, and you're good to go. You don't need to ask for any other equipment. You don't need to do anything else. Another common system that you'll run into is an FM. And an FM is like FM radio, but it's a specific frequency that's set aside for assistive listening systems. Now, with this system, everybody needs a receiver and a connector, which is not true with hearing loops. And infrared is the same thing. Everybody needs a receiver and a connector. In 2010, there were major revisions to the ADA standards. And one of the revisions was that all of the connectors, all of the receivers have to have a connector, which is telecoil, hearing aid compatible via telecoil. And the way that that's accomplished is with a neck loop. So if you go someplace and they have an FM or an infrared system, and you have a telecoil in your hearing aid, please make sure to ask for the neck loop. They're required to provide it for you. You are not to take your hearing aids out. Your hearing aids are prescriptive devices for your particular hearing loss. Captions. So today, we are lucky to have captions. We all love captions. It's one of the favorite and best things that came out of the pandemic for us with Zoom, to be able to easily communicate with anybody all the time. So the first kind of captions you need to know about are communication access real-time translation. It's called CART. It's considered the gold standard. It's the gold standard because there is a live person who is transcribing the conversation like we're having today, and it is the most accurate. This can be in person or remote, and today it's remote. So we're not meeting in a room together with a person who's providing CART in that room. There are also closed captions and open captions, like in the theater or potentially your TV. And today we're fortunate to also have automatic speech recognition, which is called ASR. And it's via apps like Ava, Live Transcribe. Apple, since I created this slide, also has live captions. So the image on this slide, you can see the image on the left is at the HLA convention, and there are captions, CART captions in all of the presentation rooms, and everybody can read the captions as well as hear things through the hearing loops that are provided. The image on the right is a speech-to-text app with ASR captions transcribing. We have translation. So the most common translation that we're all familiar with is American Sign Language, which the man in the image here is demonstrating. I took this photograph at the HLA Walk for Hearing in 2010 in San Francisco, and I thought that it was just such a gorgeous image of the man doing ASL. I've used it extensively ever since then. There's also tactile interpreting, which would be for someone who has hard of hearing as well as vision difficulties. And the first time I ever experienced this, I was really blown out of the water. So somebody holds out their hand and somebody moves their fingers in their hand in a way that that person understands. We have oral interpreting, which most of us here could probably request, and a person who is specially trained in oral interpreting could be considered a kind of communication access. They are trained to enunciate very clearly, speak slowly to make it easier for all of us to understand. And this morning I added foreign languages to this. It wasn't previously on this slide. And I had a conversation with Tim yesterday, and we were talking about somebody who spoke another language other than English. And I woke up, I'm sure that many of you do this too, when you're going to give a presentation or do something all night long, you're thinking about what you're going to do and what's going to happen. And into my dreamland popped in foreign languages. And I failed to mention to Tim yesterday that, oh, hospitals and everybody offer foreign languages as a translation service. And so I thought that there was a good chance that maybe some of you in this meeting might not have known that either. And so they generally in hospitals have translation service, and in the translation service, you could get American Sign Language, you could get tactile interpreting, oral interpreting, and foreign languages. And some I've seen up to 25 different foreign languages. The members of the Diablo Valley chapter, since I'm a dyed-in-the-wool advocate for years, I was telling everybody, you need to ask, you need to ask. And everybody was saying to me, well, we're not really sure what to ask. We don't know who to ask. We don't know what to do. And so from the conversations with them, this particular brochure was developed. And I think at one time, I created one for the LA chapter too, and I had your information that would apply to LA on the back here and on the bottom. And I would be open to doing that again if that interested you. And so one of the things that came out of that also was they didn't know who to ask. And so the first choice of people who you ask for the communication access that you need is you call the entity, could be the city government, and you want to take a workshop from Parks and Rec. You call the ADA coordinator. Well, nobody could figure out who the ADA coordinators were. So Alan Katsura, who's in this meeting today, he was able to compile a list of, originally it was going to be ADA coordinators in our county. But then we decided, well, why don't we just do it for everybody in California, and which we have done. And so Title II of the ADA, the state and local government, they're all required by law to have ADA coordinators. And on our website, we have a list of them. And this is a living document. So, of course, ADA coordinators come and go. So if you look at the coordinator in a city that you live and that person is no longer the coordinator, please let us know so that we can update the list. We also have a list of hearing loops in California. And we were very open to adding new hearing loops into that list as well. You just need to let us know. So everyone here knows that we are not getting the communication access that we need. Is that because we're not asking for it? Is that because they're not listening? Whatever the reason is, we need a change. I dream of hearing-friendly communities. When I give this presentation in my area, I say from San Francisco to New York, and since I'm giving it to you in Los Angeles, I'm dreaming with you of hearing-friendly communities from Los Angeles to New York. And I don't mean to slight Hawaii, so we're including Hawaii in that too. Now, to do that, we have to have awareness. We have to know that we're entitled to communication access. We have to know what kind of communication access works for us in that situation. The chances are great who we're going to ask for communication access from, they may not know what all the options are, and only we know what works for us. So you need to have awareness of the technologies and what you would like. The next thing you need to do is you need to exercise your courage muscle. Just like all other muscles, the more you do something, the better it gets, the easier it gets. And so I'm hoping that for you, that you begin to figure this out, you begin to experience it yourself. I know for myself personally when I first started asking for communication access, it was really hard. But as I've continued to do it, I very seldom ever don't ask for it today. So once you have awareness and you've developed your courage muscle, then, of course, you have to take action. If you don't do all three of those things, we never have any change. And we need that. I want that. I want to have the best life I can have, and I want you to have the best life that you can have. And the only way you can do that is if you have communication access. So that's an overview of what the ADA requires of us. And I'm opening this up now to questions from the audience. I would like to remind everybody that in developing your courage muscle, the ADA was not accomplished without a lot of effort and hard-earned work. I'm humbled and honored by the work that the people before me did. This is a 12-year-old girl with a helmet on, climbing up on hands and knees at the Capitol in Washington to shame our legislators to pass the ADA. And that's what it took. And so every time you get a little nervous about that, think about how hard that was. And maybe that's what we need to do too. So I'm going to quit sharing my screen and open up the conversation to everybody for questions. And please don't be shy.
There is a question in the chat from Harry, and it's asking if you could please further explain when an assistive listening system is required beyond when amplification is being used.
So anytime somebody's using a PA, anytime there's audio amplification, they're required to have an assistive listening system. It's black and white. There are two exclusions to the ADA: places of worship and private clubs. Now, places of worship or private clubs could lose their exclusion if they rented space out to the general public. But other than that, under the ADA, they're not required to provide communication access, but some entities may be required to provide that accessibility under state law. Okay, so is that okay, Harry?
Hi, Ann. Here I am.
Hi.
Lincoln, Nebraska. Thank you, Diablo, for putting this on. I appreciate the opportunity to join in from a desert out here of limited ability to access great information. So I was thinking, Ann, there was something else in that 2010 ADA in talking with Win on this that still would require a place to provide an assisted listening system, even if they don't have a PA system, because you can't not hear with the normal population at that event.
Okay, so the ADA specifically addresses an assistive listening system. Now, if you were in a venue that you couldn't hear because they weren't using because they weren't amplifying the sound. So each one of us has been in a situation where it was a long table, it was a small meeting room, there were 10 people in the meeting, and nobody was speaking through a PA. Okay. By law, they would not be required to provide an assistive listening system, but they would be required to provide communication access. So theoretically, they could provide CART. They wouldn't have to provide an assistive listening system. So there's more flexibility for what would be able to be provided under those circumstances. Okay?
Okay, thank you, Matt.
Uh-huh. Okay, Valencia.
Just so you know, it's pronounced Felicia. A lot of
Oh,
people
thank you.
a lot of people get that mixed up. But yes, so I want to share. I went to movies last week, and I usually get the Captive View device to watch the movie. And I set it up. When the movie started, it didn't work. So the manager came, said, let me go check right quick. The manager comes back and says, oh, the movie distributors didn't bring the closed caption, uh, whatever, not cart, but closed caption package along with the movie. I never heard that before. I thought maybe it was a connect issue with the device and the movie, but have you or anyone heard open caption package that comes along with the actual movie to be able to have have closed captions on that device?
Okay, so it's my understanding that when all of the films became digital, all of the films have captions that are embedded in the film. Now, I don't know this situation and I don't know what equipment they had that how the captive view connected to the captions. They may have had a problem in that hardware because there has to be an intermediary, something that connects to that system. I would go back to them again, and if it weren't that particular theater, I would contact the corporate headquarters for the theater group and inquire about that and file a complaint.
Yes, because actually it happened at two different theaters within a week.
Yeah, was it the same theater company?
Yeah, it was the same theater company. Yes.
Yeah. And you got a free ticket to the movie of your choice, right?
No.
Oh, you need to ask for it. So anytime they don't provide the accommodations, ask for a refund. Oh, did you get a refund?
No.
Oh, you needed to ask for it.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Are we good?
Yes.
Yeah. Ken Peters. Hi, Ken. Ken, are you there? I see your hand up.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, here I am. Sorry. So thank you, Ann, for the great presentation. I wanted to ask two issues. One is I'm concerned why places of worship are excluded. That's a big area that I'm dealing with a synagogue right now that I can't understand the heavy accent of the Israeli rabbi, and they don't have a good system in place. So how do you go about filing a complaint? That's the second question. But the first question is places of worship. Can that be altered at some point, you think?
It's not some place I'm going. So we have more places of worship in the United States that are providing communication access than anything else. It's in any other entities. So Ken, if you'd like to talk about that outside of this meeting, there are other synagogues in the Bay Area. See, I know Ken. He's up in Northern California with me. There are other synagogues in the Bay Area that are providing communication access. We can use them as examples to get the place that you're looking for to onboard with providing communication access. How does that sound?
Sounds good. How do you file a complaint if a place is not providing ADA communication accessibility?
Do you mean a place of worship?
No. Let's say a place that's covered by the ADA.
You go online on the government website and there's a place to file a complaint.
Okay, and that's usually pretty efficient. That'll start
Well,
a
no.
process.
So now we're talking about something else. So in the current state of affairs in our government today, I think that we'll be very unlikely to see any complaints followed through. So what you're going to need, what option is available to you is there are two roads that are open. If you file a complaint, they're not obliged to take it. They get to review the complaints that they receive and they decide which ones they're going to take. If you file a disability lawsuit, it goes before the circuit court. That's a different thing. And I think that that's the only way we're going to get anything done in the next few years. So you need to find a disability attorney. And when you find somebody who will take your case, you don't pay anything. They get their fees out of the settlements. Okay?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Terry.
Thank you, Anne. Yeah, my question started off similar to what Ken's was in terms of what if you're in a venue that's supposedly required to have, you know, assistive technology and they don't. I have experienced this, like, for example, at a theater. I don't know if I've heard there's sizes, like if it's a theater, not a movie theater, but like, for shows and concerts and stuff, if there's a certain number of seats. That's one of my questions. So it's not like if they're 50 seats and under, they're not required. So it's any theater. So I do have a local theater near my house that I went to like last year, and they do musical theater productions, and they didn't have any assistive listening. But what happened was I ended up meeting the general manager, and I said, I'm very disappointed because it is an ADA requirement, and he ended up in a dialogue with me and he said, oh, you know what? I have been looking at, systems, and I'm looking at bringing in a Wi-Fi system, and he was going to have me help him. I know Wi-Fi. I said Wi-Fi is, low latency, but it's also a matter of budget, like he couldn't afford a loop system. I did talk to him. But my question kind of goes beyond that because I live in San Diego County. And after the new year, I'm looking at pulling together a team of, we have a couple volunteers who want to help, maybe 4 or 5 of us to get like an accessibility team in our city. So and for healthcare, hospitals and for theaters and for any other venues that aren't offering things. So I was wondering if you had any advice on, and we want to be able to include multiple options and not just that you have to put in a loop, but maybe here's some things you can look at depending on, and is there someone we can bring in who's an expert at all of these that can advise? Is there anyone in California who can be like a go-to person to say, let's set up a meeting with this person who has all the expertise? Because that's not going to be us. We're just they're asking for accommodations, but we don't necessarily know what we want them to put in. Does that make sense?
Okay, so first of all, Terry, do you have this book?
Well, I mean, we have it on our website, on the HLA website.
No, well, I meant you
I
personally.
don't personally have the book, no.
Okay, so you need to read it. The whole reason that we created it was to answer the questions that you're actually asking.
Okay.
So originally we were going to put it into 2 volumes. And then when it turned out, when we were distributing them at the HLA conventions, it was much easier to combine it, and then it's always stayed as one. And so the whole first part of the document is all about how to engage in advocacy. And I can't imagine that isn't something for you in there. So one of the things as you're gathering together this team, what I'm suggesting is that you make a list first of the kinds of places to think about advocacy, and then pick. You can't do everything all at once, otherwise you don't have enough focus. So you need to pick what you want to do and figure out, okay, so for this year, we're a communication access committee. And so this year we're going to focus on 3 major theaters. And then the next thing you need to look at is, okay, so what do they have? and document what they have. And does it work? Is it good enough for you? Do they have information on their website so that any single person could, and it's my favorite place to put it. My dream would be if they had a special link just for accessibility, but most people haven't. I haven't run into anybody who's willing to do that. But what they are willing to do is to put it under visitors. So under the visitors tab, there would be a sub tab for accessibility. And then
I
they
often
list
see, yeah, I
what
often
they,
see accessibility in places like theaters, but it almost always just addresses, physical disabilities and wheelchair access and not usually
yeah, well, so you need to
communication
educate them.
access. Yeah,
You need to educate them.
yeah.
To ask for it. And so if you find somebody and I suggest that those of you who are in your committee who's going to join, pick things that have personal meaning to you so that when the year is up or 2 years are up or 5 years are up, that since you were in the committee, that you can participate in the things that had meaning for you. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does.
So
And
the
is there,
first thing I started advocating for, I'm an avid reader and I use the library all the time. So the first thing that I started advocating for was communication access at the library.
library? Yeah, yeah.
And
That
so
makes
all the
sense.
libraries in our county have communication access.
I love it. Now, is there a way to get those print? Do you still have those in print? The
Send
guidebooks?
me an email. I'll see if we can find you one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Who's next? Tim Browning.
Hi, thank you for a great presentation as always. I hope I'm not off topic here too much, but to get public access, to advocate for ourselves, for all to get the hearing options. I know hearing loops is very important, not going away, but I've been alarmed that I've been trying out different brands of hearing aids. I'm not quite there yet, but I've been alarmed that a lot of these artificial intelligence hearing aids are not coming with T-coils. And the audiologist says, "Oh yeah, they don't offer it." And I don't think hearing loops are going away anytime soon. They're going to be very, very important. And I was just curious if you had some thoughts about how this is a bit alarming to me. So I just curious if you might have some thoughts about this and what you might advise, because I'm just concerned that these major manufacturers are getting it in their head that, oh, we don't need a T-coil, that special little piece of metal, but we do. And people are going to just continue to forget about what you can do with a hearing loop. It's amazing from my understanding. I get it in our Hope meetings. You turn on our old portable loop system and people can hear. It's just amazing. So I was just curious what your thoughts were.
Yeah. So there was an HLA Get in the Hearing Loop committee, and those of us who were on that committee were dyed-in-the-wool advocates. And even though our committee doesn't exist anymore, we have continued to advocate both nationally and internationally as individuals. And I can tell you, Juliet Sturkins is no milkweed toast, and she's communicated with all of the manufacturers. Last year at the convention, we all communicated with the manufacturers. We have all made it absolutely totally clear that they can't take the telecoil out. And if nothing else, all of the places that have communication access today, if we get another system, which is coming, in the interim, we want to be able to use communication access. So the only way we can use that is if we have telecoils. So at this point in time, it's my understanding that everybody has committed to having telecoils except for Phonak. So Oticon has them, Resound has them. So that's a piece out there. If you would like to communicate with them too, if we all had a huge campaign like Sherry Eberts did with Zoom for captions, for telecoils, maybe they'd pay attention. It's outlandish. I had a chapter member recently. Oh, I make house calls. So I found that people do much better with their technology if they're in their own environment. If they come to my house and I'm showing my phone, even if it's their phone, they go home and it's not the same thing. So I value my time, and so and my intention is that I really help people. So I go to people's homes. I had a person recently who was given hearing aids by the VA without telecoils, started coming to our meetings, and the place, the assistive, the plus 55 community where we happen to meet has over 10 hearing loops. So couldn't use the hearing loops without headphones, and we all know headphones aren't great. So after talking to them and everything, he went back to the VA, and the first person that he met says, "Oh no, you don't need that. It's old technology." Then he came back and I said, "No, no, no. You go back and you tell them I live in a place that has 10 hearing loops. It's not old technology there." And the person that he met there said, "Oh, well, of course you need a telecoil." So I feel pretty confident that if this person hadn't known me, if we hadn't had this conversation, they never would have been going back to talk to their hearing healthcare provider, to whatever. I know people who previously got hearing aids from Costco without telecoils, and even after a year or longer, were able to get Costco to exchange their hearing aids for ones with telecoils after they complained loud enough. Okay, so I just would like to make one small comment about the mention of new technology coming. So for those of you who don't know me well, you don't know that I absolutely adore technology. For those of you who know me, you already know that, right? I'm always fiddling, futzing, doing something because it's fun for me. I was fortunate to be able to sit on the cadence meetings prior to the actual release of the new form of Bluetooth, which is called Auracast, as an HLA representative. I am thrilled and excited beyond the moon about what's coming in the future. But it's not now for you unless you have a Resound hearing aid or a Starkey hearing aid, and still there are not very many places that have Auracast-enabled systems. So when you hear people talk about Auracast, it's coming. The recommendation is that you have an assistive listening system, and at this time, if a venue wanted to be forward thinking, they would add on an Auracast system, so then they had both systems. So you can subscribe to the Bluetooth SIG blog and know the latest information. I just want people to know that. So if you're on a cycle of, you get new hearing aids every 5 to 7 years, and you just got new hearing aids, and they didn't have that technology in it, it's going to be, another 5 to 7 years. So, Terry.
Yes, I just wanted to share that HLA National, our magazine that's coming out in December, will have a cover article featuring Auracast and where it is now, where it's going, what it is. And then we're also coming out with a web page on our website that's on Auracast. And there's going to be a webinar. There's a webinar on December 3rd that will be to representatives from a company that works with Auracast and our convention and is one of our partners. So there's a lot of content coming out on Auracast if you want to find out more about that.
Yeah. So, Terry, I'm not adverse to the publicity that HLAA is providing for Auracast, but I wish that they did the same thing for telecoils, and they have not.
Well,
HLA is kind of silent about telecoils. We don't
well,
have a lot of, we don't have huge information about this, and it's a disappointment to me personally.
we have sections on our website about hearing loop telecoils, all of the handbook and all of the materials that your committee came up with. So it's all there.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
does anybody else have any questions? Is there anybody, and you can just raise your hand or not, anybody who got a little encouragement to maybe think about asking for communication access or something that you haven't in the past? Thanks, Harry.
I do have a question if I could quick.
Uh-huh. I think so. Is there still time, Tim? Yeah, okay, please.
I put a chat question there too. So if you had Auracast in your hearing aids, is it still going to work with your regular phone that maybe worked with your current hearing aids with Bluetooth? Or do you have to also upgrade your telephone, and you have to upgrade your laptop, and you have to upgrade maybe your desktop or other devices in order to be able to communicate with hearing aids that have Auracast? And just a quick
Okay.
little plug for us here in Lincoln. We just had our first HLAA hearing loss support group meeting a week ago, and we're going to start a monthly meeting. So we're excited about. We had about a dozen people show up, so we're excited to moving forward on that. But thank you. I'll let you answer that if you can, Ann. Thank you.
Yeah. So some of the Android phones are Auracast enabled. So if one had resound hearing aids with Auracast inside, and you had an Android phone that was Auracast enabled, you should be able to use that phone with Auracast. Apple has not committed to doing that. No one knows if they are going to do that. There are supposedly some adapters that if by some chance you wanted to use Auracast rather than regular Bluetooth, classic Bluetooth. So Phonak devices today have classic Bluetooth and Bluetooth low energy, but the Bluetooth low energy is not Auracast. It only transmits data. Okay, so that was the big thing with Auracast. It now can transmit audio. So it's going to be a full transition for all of these things. Okay, does that answer your question? Yeah. Tim? Do you have clapped hands in your thumbnail?
I did at one point. I was just
Oh.
congratulating Hillary and their support group. It's great news because I'm from Iowa, so I'm right next door to Nebraska. So it's good to see that the Heartland is doing, starting to support each other with hearing loss. So, but that was it.
I'd like to talk a little bit about HIPAA and communication access because we have a few. How much time do we have, Tim?
We typically it's up to Lisa how she's doing her captioner, so we try to keep it no more, maybe 75 minutes. So maybe I would maybe another 5 minutes, and then we probably should.
Okay, so I have personally been told when I've asked for communication access that, in a hospital setting, that it was not HIPAA compliant. And that's absolutely, completely, totally not true. So I don't want anybody who's here to waffle if someone tells them that that's the time to push back. And one of the things that they have been reticent to do, and then this piece with HIPAA is HIPAA says it's the request of the person. That's not a violation of any infringement on you if you request something. So there has been hesitation in hospital settings to use automatic speech recognition captions for meetings, for telehealth, for things like that. And I just want everybody to know it is not a violation of any rules or regulations to use that. And you need to keep pressing. And I had such terrible accommodations for when I got my cochlear implants at UCSF. And it turned out I happened to know the head of the department there, and he had promised me that they would have these accommodations. Well, when I kept getting all this negative pushback, then I would email him and let him see. So he was really shocked. And then I became a member of the Patient Family Advocacy Committee there. And I have to say, fortunately, we made some really wonderful improvements. There is a whole website on their webpage for their health about disability access and how to get it. And I made a lot of contacts from that. So if someone runs into something, maybe in Southern California, maybe some of my contacts up here might know the person who you need to contact down there. So that's my 5 minutes. And I want to wish everybody a really, really happy Thanksgiving. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
And thank you for that wonderful presentation, all that information. Um, wow, I got some reading to do. I got some researching to do. And yes, I need to, based on my question, I've got an email to go out today about my experience. So thank you for sharing all of this information. We appreciate you so much. And so I guess this is the end of our Zoom meet today. I hope you guys have a great Saturday. Let's have an awesome holiday, everyone. And we can end it right here. Bye.